That's how we
There we
picked up
go.
my silver.
Test
Widow.
1, 2.
I wanted the truck, and
Good afternoon. I will now call to order this Wayzata Public Schools School Board Work Session for Monday, July 24th, 2023. And normally we go around the table and do introductions, so maybe we'll start to my right and we'll just head down the table for some introductions.
Cheryl Polzine.
Milan Sohoni.
Bonita Lucky.
I'm Sarah Jo.
Chase Anderson.
Linda Cohen.
Sheila Pryor.
Heidi Cater.
Do we do? Oh, and we don't do, and we have some administrative teams. Do we normally? You are included in our things. We'll let you go.
Stacy Voss.
Nathan Flansburgh.
And Dana Miller is joining us as well. So welcome to everyone. And this is a fun meeting of the year because it's an introduction of new administrators. And so we'll let Dr. Anderson head to the podium to introduce and welcome to our new administrators that are here to join us.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and those in attendance here tonight. We're starting off this work session today by introducing two of our new administrators that have joined the team. Sarah literally today, and Meg, I think on July 1 or somewhere thereabouts. And I'll just invite you both, if you would, to come forward. And I've asked them to prepare a 10 or 15 minute summary of how things have gone so far. Did I tell you that, or did I forget that part? Anyway, so I'd like to introduce Sarah Stack, who will be the Wayzata High School Special Education Supervisor. Sarah, welcome. She informed me that it's her first day on the job today, and I recall that because when I called Ginny to get contact information or to invite Sarah tonight, she says, oh, that'll be great because that's her first day here and that'll be just fine. So, and also I want to introduce Meg Bennett, who's our new East Middle School principal. So we'll give you a round of applause, and if you want to make a couple comments, you can. I never want to deny the microphone.
I'm good.
She's good.
I'm excited to be here.
All right, she's excited to be here, and we're happy to have her. So Sarah, welcome.
I am very excited to be here. Thank you for the very warm welcome I've received at Wayzata Schools, and I'm a parent in this community and thrilled to join on staff. So very humbled to be here. Thank you.
Thank you both. Glad you could be here tonight.
Thank you.
And I did mention to both that they can feel free to make a graceful exit after their introductions, but they're welcome to stay if you've changed your mind. But thanks so much for being here, and best wishes to you both. And let us know how we can help. We're here to help. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, and welcome to our new administrators. Next on our agenda is under Finance and Operations reports, and we're going to talk about our middle school attendance area and have a bit of a discussion and look at maybe some preliminary recommendations for 24-25. So I'll turn it over to Dee Dee Caring, who can introduce Kristen and take it away.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Anderson. Yes, we want to follow up. We had a conversation a month ago talking about possibilities as it relates to middle school boundary changes. As you know, we did have to make some changes as it related to elementary, and you acted on that at the beginning of the month. But Kristen's going to review again the items related to the middle school, the purpose of that, and why we should be looking at that. And it's for the fall of 24, not coming up this month. So I'll turn it over to Kristen.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Dr. Anderson, members of the board. We did have a discussion very recently regarding elementary school boundaries. I've shared with you in your board packet today some recent enrollment numbers. So we ran some enrollment numbers Thursday of last week. And as you can see, Central Middle School continues to grow robustly. Just for your reminder, 2 elementary schools feed to East Middle School, Sunset Hill and Plymouth Creek Elementary School. 2 currently feed to West Middle School, Gleason Lake, and Greenwood Elementary Schools. And 5 schools, the core down the middle, Meadow Ridge, Northwoods, Kimberly Lane, Oakwood, and Birchview all attend Central Middle School. It is our former high school campus, and it does have a lot of capacity, but just as we've talked a few weeks ago, the changing ages in neighborhoods and things ebbing and flowing, some of the neighborhoods that have been feeding into East and West are more mature, stay in place, aging in place kinds of households, so they are under capacity. And I think Central Middle School continues to grow, largely because of Northwoods and our recent changes, moving Northwoods growth to Oakwood will also, again, pull some of that away from Central Middle School. So I did share with you, as of July 20th, Central Middle School currently has 1,532 students enrolled for fall. East Middle School has 646, and West has 706. We've had some very preliminary conversations about redirecting an entire school. I have studied and modeled moving parts of a neighborhood or parts of a school boundary, historically Oakwood. Many years ago, Cheryl Polzine's neighborhood and my own from Oakwood went to West, and the rest of Oakwood went to Central. I looked at those numbers. There just aren't enough fifth graders to pull a group out and have any kind of cohort to go with them. And there is capacity, at least for the next few years, for the entire grade to go. So for consideration for discussion tonight, would be realigning the middle school for Kimberly Lane from Central Middle School to East Middle School for the fall of 24-25. East has a capacity of 918 students, and that can be some give or take in the building schedule and the different teams. An enrollment of 650 on May 1st, we're down to 646 in July. So there's about 250 to 260 seats available at East. The influx from realigning the fifth grade from Kimberly Lane, the capacity at Oakwood at East Middle School should remain for at least a few years. And I think we'll have other discussions along the way in the intervening couple of years. Any questions so far before I move on to Oakwood and West?
Sheila.
Could you talk a little bit about, what we normally do as a district about siblings when something like this happens?
Yes, why don't I get through the next one and then we'll talk a little bit about that. Thank you. So the secondary thought or consideration would be realigning Oakwood to West Middle School. Again, historically, portions of West have attended Oakwood or attended West. West has a capacity of 873, and in May they had 692 students, and now they have 706. Some of that is due to the growth of Medina. There's approximately 175 seats available at West, and so it should be able to take the influx of fifth graders from Oakwood for at least through the 26-27 school year. I want to share that we did look at moving Birchview. Birchview's proximity in the south part of the district could be aligned with East or with West, just from a proximity standpoint. But the Birchview boundary actually encompasses Central Middle School. And so that's counter to how we've done our elementary boundaries, where literally the walkers that could walk there, we want to encourage that. Again, just if I found it, again, moving portions of Kimberly Lane, Oakwood, rather than the whole neighborhood, did not create enough of a group. I think that would feel very isolating to the handful of students that had to make those changes. As Sheila, as you asked, I think our plan or recommendation would be to allow younger siblings to follow their older siblings if they're together at school. So if there's a sixth grader and an eighth grader, we would allow that. We would work with transportation to find a reasonable cutoff date, because we really can't, in a cost containment world, we don't want to be running two buses through those neighborhoods forever. But we would want to allow, not have a family have one at Oakwood or one at West and one at Central. That would be very difficult. So we work with transportation, determine a cutoff date, and work with individual families. One of the nice things about thinking and looking at this early is it really allows us to eliminate some transitions for families. So if a family's moving this year and we know it's coming, our staff will work with the parents to minimize the number of transitions. We might fast forward them to the new alignment. We did that a lot with elementary boundaries. So if we have that future horizon out there, we can work individually with families to make as many good choices or help them, support them in their choices. The other thing is, it's hard to believe, but as soon as we start our fall school year, or start the school year in the fall, not long after that, we start instrument selection and a lot of other decisions for the following year. So this would allow time for the staff to plan and then realign as they start to make the eighth graders' plans to move to fifth graders' plans to move to sixth grade. We'd have those pieces in place. Also, I think, Sarah, you and I discussed this, but if there's a combination where the elementary realignment coupled with the middle school realignment causes some kind of outlier, somebody moved and and then it affected the middle schooler, we would work individually with that family to do what's best for the student. So I'm happy to answer any questions, if I can be of help.
So, yep, so just to clarify, today, we're here in a spot where it's our board meeting, but this is our work session, so we are having a conversation about this proposal to move fifth graders from Oakwood to west and from Kimberly Lane to east, effective in the next school year. Milland?
Yes, Kristen, I have a couple of related questions. So Central Middle School is at 1532 right now. What is the capacity of Central Middle School? So basically, when are we going to hit the peak? And even after moving Kimberly Lane and Oakwood to east and west, I mean, the remaining three schools, Birchview,
Northwoods and Meadow Ridge.
Meadow Ridge. So how many of those students will be added to Central Middle School every year? So how many more years do we have?
I may have to come back to you and look at that a little bit better. It's going to, there's probably about 450 fifth graders between the three bigger schools. Birchview's pretty small, but between Northwoods and Meadow Ridge, I'm just doing this from mental picture, probably 300 plus Birchview. So that I think that there's still capacity at Central Middle School. I think it becomes more of just a management and a number of middle schoolers. And I don't know that we've ever really developed, I'd have to go back and look at our WOL documents, because how we use Central Middle School as a middle school is a very different capacity from when we use it as a high school. So I will have to come back to you with that number. I don't have that one memorized, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
Dr. Anderson, you might have it memorized.
I don't, I'm sorry.
Well, you have a good memory with numbers, so I thought, just,
Heidi?
First of all, I want to say thank you that you're working so early on a solution for this, because Central really is kind of busting, and it's a great school, but needs a little bit more capacity, I think. So my question is really, and I know this is really preliminary work, so I appreciate you coming to us early, and I know that you're not going to have all the details.
and I will bring those back when we come back together.
Right,
So
right.
it's good
So
to have
if
those
you-
questions.
So if you don't have the details, just say that,
Okay.
but just know that it's a question. I know that right now, so we kind of made a change where any new housing that's coming into the northern area is coming down into Gleason Lake and into Oakwood. Both of those schools feed into West.
Correct.
So do we have any concerns about how quickly that's going to grow?
That is a concern. And again, much like the other, it's a variable of how fast those houses sell. Corcoran is selling much more quickly than Medina. So the impact of Oakwood going to West will have an impact on West. But again, there's only 3 grades, where at Oakwood there's 6 grades. So whatever that factor is, it's only half when you get to the middle school. And not all of them will come at any certain age. So I will try to have a better answer for you, but that is one pinch point. That was one thought when we made these other decisions is, does it push too much to West?
Thank you.
Welcome. It's like one of those puzzles where you push one and slide one, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Any other questions?
I have one more question. So we're talking about, so when this rolls out, if this moves forward, right? If the plan would be, we're moving 1 grade at a time, right? So it would be a rollout of not every, okay. So help me
So
understand.
to realize the full impact, it will be 4 years from now.
Okay.
So year 1 will only affect 6th grade, and it's going to be very mitigated because you're going to have siblings that will follow their older sibling. So year 1, which would be 24, 25, will have a pretty minimal impact on change, on the impact, if you say the net at Central Middle School. 7th grade will be more, and there'll be fewer siblings, again, that will follow just because of the way ages work. So then it will take a full 3 years to kind of realize and have everyone associated. So even with the moves of Medina and Corcoran feeding into West, we won't feel that full realization for 4 years. And again, we may have other decisions or other changes in the intervening time.
Dr. Anderson or Dr. Flansburgh?
Is there another question? Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, first of all, thank you, Kristen, for being here tonight, and Dee Dee for your assistance and help with putting together this proposal for the board's consideration. I think really what we're looking for tonight is to hear back from you and to provide some guidance or direction on next steps. And if you see this as a viable option and one that ought to be considered for further development, it would be our intent to take any feedback that we've received tonight, put together a recommendation that we would bring back at the August 14th school board meeting to this effect, indicating that we believe that a good plan, and the one that, as of this moment, I would be in a position to recommend, that we move Kimberly Lane from the central middle school attendance area to the east middle school attendance area, and we move Oakwood from the central middle school attendance area to the west middle school attendance area, as Kristen just outlined. But there are still a few details to iron out with that, and to make sure that we've given a second, third, and fourth check on that process, and making sure that all of our numbers are adding up and making good sense. The principals of these schools are in the loop and understanding that this is a change that might be forthcoming. We really do need to do something with Central. I do think that these are the two schools that would make the most sense given their location and proximity, number of students. I will say that the change of the elementaries to feed more students into Oakwood and Gleason Lake is something for us to track, but there is a pretty good amount of capacity at West, and I would suggest, and I've shared this with others, that even 3 or 4 years down the road, it would be my guess that we would not create anything that would be maybe but more challenging than what we currently have at Central. So that's going to continue to be challenging for the Central administration and staff to continue to have a middle school nearly twice the size of the other two. So I think this is a really solid plan, and if it evolves into a recommendation to the board for action on August 14th, I think it will help bring some relief to Central and be a good plan for us.
Comments? I guess my response to you, and in that process is, you raised a couple of things that I think about. I think some just clarity around what does that transportation piece look like? What does the sibling piece look like? To be pretty clear about who is affected and how and why would be helpful. It was helpful to Dr. Anderson for you to talk about our middle school principal collaboration, and we know that that our middle school principals work really closely with one another, and just making sure that they have that understanding. I'm assuming that at the elementary level, rolling out, I guess another question would be timing around rolling out to our 5th grade families, at what time they would hear about that, and how we would roll that out, and maybe some things like, oh, no, I guess that wouldn't work, because all the 5th graders would be coming, so just in those back to school things, we would just have different schools going for all those January welcome events and things. Sorry, I'm starting to think out loud a little bit. So, which we have staff for. So, yeah, I think and to that extent, and I'm assuming that our facilities committee of the board continues to discuss our facilities and our big picture facilities. Our teaching and learning committee of the board will continue to talk about the middle school model and the things that we're doing around our middle school programming, and so that would be in the mix as well, but not to hold up this decision, but just know that that's part of that process. Final questions or comments in advance of this potentially coming to the board? Dr. Flansburgh.
Madam Chair, thank you. Just a quick answer to Dr. Sohoni's question earlier regarding capacity. We were able to look it up in the old Wold numbers, and we are looking at a middle school capacity for Central at 1635 would be full capacity. And again, what we're talking about is it's pretty squeezy already, and we're already over 1,500, and those numbers are going to close pretty quickly. So also to recognize, and Heidi Cater, you mentioned it earlier, thank you, the time that is necessary to allow our middle school principals to think about scheduling differently. When we begin a rollout process, that actually takes a significant amount of time and effort, and it will allow the team of principals to be able to do so planfully.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could mention one more thing that it kind of goes along with what Dr. Flansburgh said. Looking at our 3 middle schools and how many students are in there, when we have a more level number of students in there, that helps with the efficiencies and running sections and teaming model versus where we're kind of off kilter in that right now. So that was also one of the goals of what we looked at, and apologize if Kristen already said that, but just wanted to make that point as clear, is that all of those things were reviewed and considered when we brought it to the facility committee of the board as well.
Fantastic. Okay.
So I'll just add then that we'll plan to come back with a recommendation at the August 14th school board meeting for your consideration for taking action on a proposal that will reflect the presentation that you've heard here tonight.
Fantastic.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen.
Thanks, Kristen. All right, and I think that was it for Dee Dee, your work. And so then we move on to community education reports and our community ed year in review. And so I think I will invite Jenny Ebert and Michelle Bedore from Community Ed and the Wayzata Early Learning School. Welcome to the both of you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for the welcome. As Sarah Johansson mentioned, I'm Jenny Ebert, Director of Community Ed, and this is Michelle Bedore, our Director of Early Learning. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. We are so excited to talk a little bit about Community Ed and the work that we did in fiscal year 23. This was a version of a presentation that I did for our Community Ed Advisory Council, and Bonita got to be part of that. We appreciate your representation on that committee, and after sharing it with Dr. Anderson, he thought this would be helpful to share with the rest of the board as well. So to start us off, I always like to start with our Community Ed wheel to kind of ground us in what we are and who we are in Community Ed. We cover a wide variety of programming from early ed all the way through adults and a little bit of everything in between. Before launching into the presentation, I just want to take a moment to say thank you to our staff. We have over 260 people that represent the work here in this wheel. And it was a good year. We had many great highlights, what you hear about in this presentation, but it was a hard year on a number of accounts too. Still dealing with illnesses, COVID, lack of subs. Michelle's gonna get a little PTSD in this process. We had a death of 3 staff members too. So there were some really challenging moments that happened as we worked through our goals and had to kind of realign as the work went on. But given all that, we have a lot to be proud of, and I just want to take a moment to thank our Community Ed staff for their amazing work in all of this. So as we put together our goals in Community Ed, we always use the strategic roadmap and our equity commitment as our guiding documents. And then we work to align really closely with the district-wide priorities as well. So you'll see the Community Ed goals and the district-wide priorities lined up right here, and you'll note they align very closely. We appreciate the work of our teaching and learning department as they provided guidance across the district on the work that we can be doing. And in Community Ed, we really wanted to also focus on improving the student experience. That means increasing connectedness, which can look like a lot of things, and you'll hear about as we go on. Building meaningful and trusting relationship, opportunities to connect across our community. We also wanted to focus on reducing academic barriers. The work we do in early ed, Michelle will talk about later on, is a key part of that, including increasing our early childhood screening participation, focusing on that kindergarten transition, which is a successful learner equation, which the school board had heard about earlier this year, improving equitable outcomes, and then nurturing lifelong learning, which is really the heart of what we do in Community Ed. And lastly, ensuring high-quality instructional practices. We had a variety of turnover in Community Ed. I think this was not an uncommon experience throughout the pandemic for schools and other businesses. But through that process, we found we needed to really focus on our staff training and improve onboarding as we bring new people on. So that's a key part of that process, and then recruitment and retention, which we'll talk about. But before launching into kind of the data and the outcomes for community ed, we basically function as a small business. We are a separate fund from the general fund. You've seen the slide. I did a screen capture from presentations Dee Dee's done in the past year. We operate separately. About 80% of our revenue is generated through program fees. So the success of our programming and the success of our goals and work is really demonstrated in our ability to generate funds. I start with this next slide before launching into some of our goals and outcomes because it really tells the history of the work that we've done in the last few years. Yeah, that red bar really, yeah, it's a good way to describe it, Sarah, thank you. You know, you'll see the blue leading up to the pandemic is really where community ed kind of sits. We need to have a fund reserve to cover our work in case there is an economic downturn. That can happen when 80% of your revenue is generated in fees. You need to have that balance in there to kind of protect you in those instances. We use that protection and then some as we went through the pandemic. We were very limited on the amount of programming that we could offer. For a fee, we did provide free childcare for our essential workers, which we were happy to do, but it meant expenses without revenue, which left us at fiscal year 21, ending the year with almost $1 billion negative fund reserve. Which I don't think you can call it a fund reserve if you're in the negative, but that is where we were sitting, and we were tasked with really trying to figure out how do we solve that problem. And that really aligns with the goals that we were working on because it was about thinking about our financial sustainability and our work. We had to make some really hard decisions about cutting some staff, which we hadn't previously done. We wanted to make sure that stayed away from our direct services, so it wasn't in our front-facing positions with our managers and clerical. We cut about $500,000 in staffing, 5 positions. We cut supplies, we cut field trips, we cut doing anything fun. We searched out grants, we were scrappy, we were thrifty. And we also really listened carefully to what our community wanted and needed next as we needed to change and shift and adapt post-pandemic to what our community wanted. And in that, we were able to rebuild that $1 million hole, come out ahead last year, and you'll see our estimate for fiscal year 23. Again, we've worked really hard. Our staff have been extremely dedicated to building out of this hole and rebuilding our fund balance. And we are excited that starting with next year, you'll see we are not working so hard to rebuild our fund balance because we are in a sustainable spot that we'll be able to refocus some of our work. But this is just important for you to see because this was a lot of what guided how we got to where we are here today. So with that, I'll go into the more fun stuff. So here's the wheel again. I'll start from the top and work my way around, and Michelle will join me. Yeah, she'll join up the end here. So at the top, we have our classes for adults and youth. And this is an area, all of these saw growth compared to previous years. We are serving thousands of students and adults through our programming, whether it's through our youth classes, our adult classes, Adult Basic Ed, and Project SOAR. Because I only get a half an hour here tonight, I'm not going to go into detail on all of these, but I'm going to highlight a couple of them. So youth classes and camps, for example, you have the data up there that shows where we were pre-pandemic to where we are post-pandemic. Our staff have been working extremely hard to listen to what our community wants and needs and offering new and different programming. With that, we've added some staffing to help with that because we continue to see this growth. And are really grateful for our partnership with Interfaith Outreach, who continues to do wonderful, amazing fundraising to support scholarships for our students, which is a big part of this increase here too. The other one I want to point out in this particular part of the wedge is our Adult Basic Ed program. This is our first year with our new consortium, Adult Options in Education, which is with Hopkins, St. Louis Park, and Minnetonka schools. This was a big shift for our team to change consortiums that we had been part of for 20 plus years into new areas. That was different with different expectations, but we did it for all the right reasons, and it paid off in that we had increased the number of students participating, as well as a 50% increase in our instructional hours, which means that there's 50% more time in the classroom that our adult students were having as part of our ABE program. We continue to partner really closely with Early Ed on free childcare and preschool opportunities and are expanding that as well. Next on the wedge is our childcare program. This continues to be an area where we see high demand. I have numbers here of the number of students that are participating, but also included individual hours of childcare because it's not always an apples to apples comparison. One year we could have 1,500 students participating, another year 1,200 students, but if they attended 2 days versus 5 days or 3 days, it can look and feel a little different. So if you take the actual individual number of hours provided, we have a 10% increase over previous years in that. And we are very, very proud of that work. It's taken a lot of hard effort on the team of Wayzata Kid leadership led by Hillary Dish, who is on vacation here today, or she would be here talking about this herself, but working on hiring is a key part of that, and she's worked closely with our communications and HR departments to do that work. Summer's going well as well, and I'm sure as the summer wraps up, we'll give you more updates on how that's all coming together. So in Wayzata Kids, their primary goal is around having a safe, fun place for kids to be, and kind of a secondary program goal, which leads to our community ed goals, was around empowering our staff to be leaders. And our program instructors in particular were an area of focus. So we looked at what's the additional training that we can provide kind of that middle level management to support them in doing more within their jobs, to do more support our students and our families, and to help them be leaders and feel excited about the work that they're doing. And so through that, I'm going to get my notes right from Hillary here. She really looked at how do they support the program more through program activities and classroom activities, actually designing the training for our staff during the summer, developing the field trips, developing the on-site special events, and really empowering them to take ownership in this work. Our staff anecdotally have told us this summer it's the best summer that they've ever had. They felt really connected to the work. Our students and families have been really happy. All of our surveys from this last year, both from staff, students, and families, came back very, very positive. So this is something we'll continue to do, is look at how do we empower those program instructors and other staff within our program. Also want to thank our staff for their helpful work with our Wayzata Kids Union in providing additional actual staffing opportunities to provide some leadership there too. Next up is the volunteer program. So within our volunteer wedge of the wheel, we have two key programs, our volunteer club and our literacy volunteers. Our volunteer club had 843 high schoolers register for it. It's our largest high school club. The participation was down a little bit this year compared to previous years. It was the first year that we requested a fee for participating in the program. Previously, it had been free. We did that because of the previous slide that you saw with that big red bar, needing to really look at overall sustainability of all of our programs. So while we had less overall students participating, we had a 30% increase in the amount of hours that they served this year. So though there were the changes in it, including the name of the club, which used to be Club YES, we still saw really great engagement from our students and our community in this work. They also received an award from the Hamill and Corcoran Lions Club, which we're really excited for as well. Our second volunteer program is our literacy volunteers. This was the first year that we were back to a full year of normal literacy volunteers. We had kind of snuck into it a little bit last year, but it was the first full year, and it was really about rebuilding. Over half of our literacy volunteers were new this year. We had to start over and recruit and train, again, with partnership with our teaching and learning department and our fabulous literacy experts. We were able to provide some really great training to get some fabulous volunteers into our classrooms with students, providing 2,300 hours of reading support. Just a little note, we did make this was a pretty significant change for our students at the high school to change the name of their club. And I know you guys saw a little bit of this last year as we went through the rebranding process, but again, just a reminder that they went from Club YES to the Volunteer Club as part of this process. Next up is facility rentals. As noted here, we really value the community's investment in our school district properties, and community ed, we really want to make every opportunity possible for people to come in and rent and be part of our facilities, and partly as a thank you for their investments in the facilities that we have in Wayzata. And our staff take that really seriously when it comes to customer service. We added some additional staff time to help meet the growing needs of our facility rental program as we added the green spaces. We also added a new facility rental manager in March. And this team really, I'm just so impressed with the work that they've done in the few years that they've been here. One of the key things that they worked on was meeting the needs of our cricket community. We heard loud and clear that our community wanted to have cricket opportunities, and when you look at our dome and our turf fields and our arena and whatnot, they tend to be highly booked up spaces with other users, and so they worked carefully to kind of just find all the little spots that were open and make sure that that opportunity existed, and it's been met with great enthusiasm and great participation from our community wanting to enjoy cricket. So just one example of that really careful listening to our customers and trying to meet their unique needs. A quick snapshot of the facility rentals. We basically will rent out just about any space in the district for anybody who might be interested, but these are the primary spaces that are most used. We have partners like the YMCA, West Suburban Suburb School, Chinese School, our youth associations, dance and theater groups, you name it. We work with a whole lot of different people to, again, make sure that they have the opportunity to enjoy our facilities per board policy. Partnerships is an area where I wish I could talk for an hour. Jody Olson did a great presentation on this to our Community Ed Advisory Council, where she did talk, I think, for an hour about all the work that was happening with all these partners, and it's amazing. And because time is limited here tonight, I'll just say this is a core part of the work that we do. The results and success that you're seeing in those other wedges are due to the work that we have in our partnership area of the wedge. And it's also a key part of the work that we do to support everything in the district. As our partners come in and want to be of service to our community, to our district, we try and be that liaison to those activities, and it looks different every year as to what that might be. So the last couple slides here are the Early Learning School. It was a year and a half ago, spring, I worked with the previous special ed director to really look at some emerging needs that we were seeing in early learning, and made the really hard decision to restructure our leadership model at that time. We knew that we had some really important goals that we were trying to reach. To reduce academic disparities takes really careful leadership, and we knew that alignment and collaboration would be key. So we were so happy to hire Michelle Bedore to come in and be our first ever early learning director here in Wayzata Schools, and are so delighted with the work that she's done. She's been here just a year. We were remarking as she was coming in that it was just a year ago, probably around this time, that she was being welcomed as a new administrator. And want to turn it over to Michelle to talk a little bit about our early learning work.
Thank you, Jenny. Madam Chair, Dr. Anderson, School Board, and I'm short, so thank you for having us here tonight. I'm a little bit losing my voice, so hopefully the rain will get out all that smog and I'll clear out my allergies, but I can't use the new card anymore, so now I need to speak with authority on this, so I'm going to do my best. But it's been a year of learning, and I really enjoyed being in the role and getting to know all the staff and students, and we just have a wonderful crew in early learning, so I can't say enough about the work they do, and we're in hiring mode for fall, so if you know anybody who likes working with little people, we still have some positions open, but we're getting through them, so we're excited to fill those roles. So Early Learning School, just some facts and numbers for you. We had just about 500 part-day preschoolers, so they're coming either morning or afternoon or some part of the day. We had 191 full-day preschoolers, so that is at our 9 elementary schools, and they are open from 7 in the morning till 6 at night. We had 147 parents and little people coming to ECFE, one of my favorites when they come with the babies and toddlers. And we screened 1,030 3, 4, and 5-year-olds this past school year. We just submitted our report. Thank you, Dr. Anderson, for signing off. And we will get paid back then next year for those kiddos that we screened. So in my estimation, from what the reports I've looked at, that's a high for us that we screened over 1,000. So we're doing really good on that. We have a robust outreach staff who's going out into neighborhoods and doing park play and neighborhood apartment complexes and library visits, providing one-on-one support to families, helping them navigate both early ed and school. And so many of our families in our outreach program have connections with interfaith outreach. They have connections with elementary. Some of them have preschoolers all the way up to high schoolers with lots of kids in the family. So our outreach team has done a fantastic job of really reaching those families and helping them acclimate to school in Wayzata. Jenny made some fancy charts for us. So these are our numbers from the previous slide, but really what you can see is that our participation is going way up, especially in the red, which is the family activities, and participation in person classes are higher than our online, which we love to see because we really want the moms and babies coming into programming or joining us at programming out in their community and really being a part of that. We have a projection for next year, which I will caution you is low, but we're not worried about that. That's actually higher than we usually get. About August, parents start to go, oh, my kids are going to school. My little one's going to preschool. Maybe I should do ECFE because I'm already at the school. So we usually see those numbers start to climb significantly in August. So not worried about that. Our full-day preschool, as you can see, we are holding steady right about 191, 198 for fall. We are full at all capacity in all of our 9 elementaries, and we have quite a robust wait list. So that is one area that we we could take another 60 kids and parents would be very happy. So that's one area that we, continue to look at where we could program and how we could get more kiddos off our wait list. This is the part-day preschool enrollment. It's a little bit different because there's so many different options that we had to make it on a different chart or its own chart. But you can see we program for full day, the yellow, full day 4-year-olds, part day 4-year-olds, part day 3-year-olds, and part day 2-year-olds. So those are all kiddos that are coming to school and being dropped off by mom and dad, and nobody's staying with them, like our ECFE. So we finished the year strong, and we are looking really good for fall. I will say the fall numbers, yes, on Friday I had 49 of our early childhood special ed students that parents hadn't yet completed the enrollment to get into those classes. Some of them are still in eval, some of them we know are coming, some of them just haven't done the work yet. And so we have about 50 more kids that just haven't done the process, but we know they're coming. So those numbers are looking on track again for fall of 23-24. And then I just wanted to highlight some things. We were really excited to be a part of BUILT. I think our BUILT district team members were excited to hear about the great work. I'm super proud of our staff. I let them loose with the BUILT goals and asked them to showcase their work, and they just did a fantastic job. For those that were at those presentations, it was really fun to see them shine on their own without me doing any of the work. So it was great. We revised our scholarship process and our scholarship questions. To me, it felt a bit intrusive. So we really looked at what are the questions we need to ask in order to satisfy both our own internal processes and for those kids that we scholarship out of MDE payments, what we needed, and we scaled back. I think we went from 2 to 3 pages down to just 1 with questions that felt a little more respectful to families. Don't want to ask information we've already asked somewhere else, or we don't actually need to know. So that part I feel good about. We have Tori and Jessica working individually with families on scholarships and creating those processes. We studied and collected data and created a really robust plan for onboarding all of our staff to the classroom engagement model. Don't get me started on what that is, because I could go on for the rest of the school board meeting, but it's a fantastic program that most of our part-day staff have been onboarded with, but our full-day teachers and assistants have not. And so we have a plan for this school year where they will all get the training. It's 5 modules, and they will be coached in their classrooms to onboard all of the practices. So we're super excited about that. We had 3 goals for our 22-23 school year. We wanted to increase that connectedness and belonging across all of our early learning. We still have some work to do with that, but we will continue that work into next year. We did some of that with weekly leadership check-ins with teachers, professional development days focused around themes, offered sharing opportunities so teachers could showcase their work. We did kind of a drive-by, for lack of a better word, where they had boards up and they went from station to station and learned what each other were doing in their classrooms. It was a very well appreciated activity, and we're going to continue that for next year. And then we worked with our district partners to align our district calendar. That was a fun process, but all of our early childhood programs will be on the same calendar, and it will match the district calendar. And I can't remember the number. Do you remember how many school days that added back? Was it 10 or 11 school days back into the early learning calendar? So we're really excited about that. Again, we have our partnerships with Healthy Kids and making scholarships available. We did a lot of work on Connect at 3 initiative we're launching right now in July, and then the Successful Learner Equation, all supporting those families for school and readiness, and lots more to come on Connect at 3 because we're just getting that rolling. But that's where we're at in early learning. I think we ended the wheel.
We did end the wheel. So thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
A lot of really important work on bringing together our staff in early learning. Michelle's overseeing 700 students and families, along with 100-plus staff across 10 different buildings. It's no small feat as a leader to come in and help guide that work and do the really important work of serving our students and families. So really appreciative of that and excited for what is to come. We're in the phase now. It's hard to talk about last year as we're like full into planning for next year right now. So we're thinking about our work in supporting literacy, which you're going to hear about from Dana and her team after this. That'll be a key role and goal that we have in community ed, is how we infuse literacy into all of our programming, from early ed all the way up into our adult programming, as well as that Birth to 5 connectedness, which is an extension of the Successful Learner Equation and the Connect at 3 work that you guys heard about earlier this year. It's really continuing that really important piece of focusing on how do we bring in especially our Birth to 5 families to feel connected with our district and supported. And I'm not going to help with your enrollment issues because I'm going to just recruit them all to come in and be part of our schools. And that's going to be in close partnership with our communications team as we work through those next goals. So I'd love to say more, but I will stop. And thank you for your time, and appreciate the opportunity to share with you guys here today.
Well, thank you so much, and stick around because I'm sure we'll have some comments. This presentation highlighted again where you are starting with our families, as they're thinking about the birth of their child that's impending. And then you get our kiddos from the earliest of the early morning to, the latest of the latest nights with the rentals. And then you think of the ways that you engage our community and the, to the retirees that are coming back for the literacy program. It really is, our community ed is at the core of what we do, which is why there's a very full wheel and a really exciting presentation that I think we all could listen to for hours, but we'll keep it moving. So, board colleagues, any questions or comments? Cheryl and then Milland.
Thank you for the great presentation and all the great work that you did, especially with that COVID year in there that really provided huge challenges, to say the least. When you say that we have waiting lists, would you say the barrier is physical space or unable to hire early learning teachers, staffing issues, or yes and?
Yes, and yeah. So historically, as a district, we've always committed one classroom in every elementary school for full-day preschool. So we've always had 9 to work with. When we've had, I'll call them opportunities in our elementary schools where maybe enrollment's been down and there's an extra room, we've taken advantage of that to add preschool classrooms. So we have an extra room at Oakwood right now and 2 extra ones at Kimberly Lane. And we continue to monitor closely if there's space in other buildings. We tend to have kids, as Kristen will talk about, show up throughout the summer and whatnot, so it gets a little tricky. We don't want to assign a classroom to a group of 20 students whose family is counting on that for childcare and then not have it work out. So we try and balance that really carefully, but we continue to watch that piece of it. But hiring also is a challenge. It's going better this year than last year, incrementally. So we're hoping that continues to improve.
Ellen.
Thank you, Jenny, for the presentation. Thank you, Michelle. I'm going with an assumption that community ed competes with the Plymouth Parks and Rec for many of the programs, if not all. Adult literacy, maybe not. Wayzata kids, maybe not. But you mentioned cricket. Mm-hmm. The Plymouth City of Plymouth has just approved the Meadows Park facility, outdoor facility, which will probably be ready by next year. And that is very important for kids growing up. In the younger age, kids, it's tennis ball or the softball that they play with, and they can play indoor. As they grow older and then go into adulthood, it's the hard ball that they need, and those usually cannot be played indoor. So they need a cricket ground and a regular cricket pitch. So how do we compete with Plymouth's Park and Rec as a Wayzata community ed?
I would say in theory we compete, but we have such an amazing community that the demand is strong at all levels. So while we may have similar programming as the City of Plymouth or the YMCA or other really great community partners out there, there doesn't seem to be there's an excess of demand even with all of that. So we see it as opportunities. We look to our partners to see where we can grow and enhance each other's work, and see it all as a positive thing. So it's not something we're concerned about. We really just look at how do we continue to listen and partner and meet that need. And at this point, we still have work to do to continue meeting need, thankfully.
Jenny, on that note, do you want to, we've also partnered with the city of Wayzata, right? And sort of that, I mean, I think we have strong partnerships across the board, but Wayzata is one. Do you want to share any information about that?
Yeah, the city of Wayzata came to us in 2018 when I had first started and said, you know, we don't have a Parks and Rec department, but we'd like to be able to do more. We had got all ready to launch a great outdoor Parks and Rec program for the city of Wayzata in 2020, and that didn't quite happen. So we are just kind of in year 2 of seeing that come together, and they've been very happy with our ability to program community ed programming within the context of what the city of Wayzata has to offer. So we showcase their wonderful parks. We do, there's a photography class coming up, outdoor photography, paddleboarding, yoga on the beach, all sorts of fun things where we get to meet our mission of having adults kind of foster that lifelong learning and explore new ways to nurture what excites them, while then showcasing the city properties, which is what they're excited about, and making sure they're getting used by their residents.
Thank you. Linda.
Thank you very much, both of you, for the report and for what you do. I was just sort of curious as we talk about partners, since the district is part, I mean, there are parts of 8 municipalities that are part of Wayzata District. Some, like Plymouth, are all, I believe, or almost all Wayzata, and some, like Minnetonka, are a very small portion of Minnetonka's in the Wayzata School District. I happen to be in that portion, and I'm wondering, do we do any sort of partnerships with some of these smaller pieces of our district?
Yeah, we don't have a particular partnership with the city of Minnetonka, for example, but we do partner with the community ed departments quite frequently to say, you know, your community is interested in providing this class, so is ours. Let's offer it in a joint location, shared registrations to make sure that the class runs, because maybe we don't have enough people and you don't have enough people, but together we're able to provide this opportunity. And sometimes we might host it in Minnetonka or Orono, or it's in Wayzata, but then it allows that opportunity to just really enhance what people are able to participate in.
Okay, thanks.
Anita.
I just wanted to say, I've had an opportunity to listen to the presentation, and I'm blown away yet again. So my comment is just thank you both and your teams for your tenacity. And the part that I really appreciate so much is in the meetings, as we sit on the advisory council, the collaboration that you have, bringing the voices together of the community has been so important. Your teaching, our learning, the feedback that you've received. So when I see this, I get so excited. So thank you both and your teams for what you do.
Thank you, Benita. We appreciate your insights on that committee.
Heidi.
Quick question. First of all, I want to say thank you. You guys did a great job reporting out. And I have a deep appreciation for how the district is supporting early ed with putting built, including you guys in that whole process, because I think that is going to have a huge impact on literacy. I have a question about volunteer clubs. So the number of volunteers decreased, number of hours went up. Mm-hmm. Did you dig into that at all? Is there any insight?
Yeah, Well, I like data, so I did go in very deep and looked at kind of the transition from year to year to see like where did we lose students, and it was a combination of we lost some students through the pandemic. So in our like junior and seniors, we had less of them participating this current year, and a lot more freshmen and sophomores that were joining on to be part of the volunteer club. So that about 200 less kids that we saw in that were juniors and seniors. And when we talked to our staff about it to say, oh, what does that mean? What do you think is happening here? Brenda Badger, who runs that program, said, I've been talking with the students and trying to get some feedback. And for a lot of students, it was, I joined Volunteer Club because I thought it would be fun. It's great when it was free. I maybe did 5-10 hours, whatever the minimum was, and it's great to put it on my resume or my college application. But if I have to pay, maybe I'm not going to do it. So it unintentionally maybe weeded a few people out that way, but the other side of it was those that did participate and sign up ended up giving a lot more hours and being highly more active than we had previously seen. So this was year one, so it'll be curious to kind of see how that goes. If we continue to see drop off at that junior and senior year, if truly that was just a pandemic impact. So we'll watch that carefully.
So.
No. Well, Michelle, I think we saw you quick for an introduction last year, and then like right at like the next meeting almost, you were coming to present on the calendar and the work that you've done. And I think that just reflects your pace, right? I mean, welcome. You've been here, your happy anniversary, and there's just been so much incredible work being done. It feels like you've always been here. So thank you. And Jenny, thank you for your leadership and managing through staff change and transition. We so appreciate both of you and all of your many, many touch points with our community. So
thank you. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
thanks. Okay, and now we will do a transition over to our teaching and learning reports and a READ Act update from our teaching and learning team. So we'll let Dana Miller do some introductions and some welcomes to your staff that has accompanied you to this afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Superintendent Anderson, members of the board. We are excited to be here. It feels like we were here just in April to talk about our literacy work, and since this is one of our driving forces, I'm sure we'll continue to be here to talk about our literacy work. Tonight I have with me Austin Tollerson, our Director of Teaching and Learning, who is also just finishing his first year and has had to get up to speed really quickly as he oversees E, as Jenny Ebert was talking about, and Michelle. We've really extended our involvement in early literacy and are so excited about that partnership. And then he oversees that E12+, because we also work closely with our transition students. Also with me tonight is our instructional coordinator in literacy and dyslexic services, also PK-12, Julie Schneider, and then unable to be with us tonight, but very much a part of this work and very much a part of putting this presentation together was Ann Fehrenbach, and she's our instructional coordinator for EL in pre-K-5 and very much with our general education department. And so tonight we're going to just give you a brief update of where we're at with the READ Act, which, in case we refer to it as the READ Act a lot, but it's actually the Minnesota Readiness to engage in academic development of our reading program. And so it's got a great big long thing, and so as in education, we make acronyms. So tonight, really, our goal is twofold, and as you leave tonight, you're feeling really good about where Wayzata is positioned in response to the development of the READ Act. So our goal one is that we're well positioned to satisfy the requirements, and I would say we've been doing that for several years. And so as we meet with Dr. Gibbons or the U, Wayzata is really being able to be kind of a beacon for the work that has continued to go on. And so we're very excited about the support that we've gotten through the READ Act that kind of solidifies that we're on the right direction here. And then also that we have in teaching and learning committed to really job-embedded professional development. So a lot of the work that happens with literacy happens around our number one resource, and that's our teachers and our human capital. And so we spend a lot of time doing professional learning with them to make sure they have the skills needed to help our youngest and all of our learners engage in high-quality literacy. And along with that, then we need to make sure we're supplying them with the high-quality evidence-based materials. And so really we're going to go through those components of the READ Act and tell you really where we're at with that tonight. We do, though, always kind of start, like Jenny likes to start with her wheel. We like to start with this quote. You've seen it before. But it's really where teaching and learning is kind of our anchor. And that's that we are in a learning profession. And so we're always seeking continuous improvement, right? And so whether it's the READ Act or looking at math curriculum or whatever it is that we're doing, it's that idea that we don't have to be bad to get better. Right? And so it's not that we've been doing anything wrong or that teachers have been doing anything wrong, but we learn more through research, we learn more through knowing more about students, and therefore our practices and responses to our learners have to change as well, and our skill sets of that human capital have to change. And so that's really what it's all about, is just continuing to get better and be part of that learning organization. So I'm going to kick it now over to my team to really break down more specifically what we're hearing about and where we're at with this READ Act. And then we'll have time for some questions. So I think, Austin, it's you.
Yep. Yes, we're finally here. I feel like we've talked about the READ Act all year long in many of our work sessions and different meetings. It did get finally signed in then May 24th by Governor Walz. And so we're going to go through, kind of talk through some timelines we've hit and really reinforce a lot of things that we've already done in our planning and things that we're prepared to do to implement in compliance with the legislation. One of the main things to note, this act is that it's replacing the Read Well by Third Grade Act. And so what used to be more of accountability at the end of third grade now is accountable year to year for kindergarten, first, second, third grade, and then with stipulations in how to react in fourth and fifth grade for our students who may not be achieving at a reading level. And then intentionally including, again, as we talked about, that early learning, as well as multi-language learners, and then our students receiving special education as part of that act. So I'm trying not to say it too many times tonight, but again, part of this, what you're going to learn tonight, is we are really well poised for this, as Dana mentioned. We have been preparing and thinking about this, and kudos to an amazing team with Julie and Ann, and the literacy, the preparations that have been ongoing since well before I was here have prepared us to be in alignment with that act, and not only to keep pace, but in many ways be ahead of pace with many of the stipulations that come through the act. And so as you look, as we talk through infrastructures of peoples and systems that we have in place, and that those that will be working to continue with training and professional learning in alignment with not only specific training and, that comes through the READ Act, but also with what we look at as how we develop our PD throughout the year and making sure that is connected with the work of the buildings. You see how CEL, our instructional leadership preparation, the work of our building leadership teams, the work of PLCs to support the teachers at the teacher level and planning levels for those instructional practices and moves that they're making, through to our systems of MTSS, and implementation of our new literacy coaches this year as well to help really that focused literacy support for our teachers. Close collaboration, again, with equity inclusion, student support services, technology services. As you've heard, community education, this really is systems work. Literacy affects us throughout our system. E12, and is something that obviously it takes more than a few of us in a team to implement and really do well. So here's a look. Many of you might have seen this as part of the Minnesota School Board Association presentation. So what this really does is kind of pull out some of the timelines and things that you're expected to meet as a district in full implementation of the READ Act. And you'll see starting here in this July through July of 2027, we'll look a little bit more closely at some of the things that we're doing as a district in order to make sure that we are keeping pace and, again, in many ways, ahead of pace of these timelines. Me, sorry. I'm trying to not use my reader and go back between. So I'm new to readers here, so see me kind of struggling with what I can see and can't see on the various screens. Not that we don't have enough computers up here, but I'll try to focus on the two that are the main ones here. So you'll see this first one really talks about new purchases. So starting in July, anything new that a district were to buy would need to make sure that it is 100% compliance with science of reading, evidence-based curriculum, structured literacy, the foundational, you've heard the 5 pillars or foundations of literacy. We have already implemented CCC. That implementation began in 2017 with the research that went into that. Our team used things like Scarborough's Reading Rope, Science of Reading, the Simple View of Reading, the Foundations of Literacy when they made that decision. So again, many ways, WYZETA was ahead of the curve in implementation of a curriculum that met the criteria, and we believe will meet the criteria for the curricula that's going to be approved by the state. They haven't officially said what curricula they're going to approve. In January of 2024, they're going to reveal 5 different reading curricula that will be foregone, or if you have those, or if you're going to purchase those are the ones the state have approved. and then they'll have a process to reconcile if you have a curriculum that doesn't make their specific list. We believe and very confident CCC would meet all of the criteria that will be coming out of that, of those decisions. Our SIPS, which is our intervention program, is tied closely to that. So again, also very evidence-based, structured literacy-based, and seeped in the foundations of those literacy structures. Orton-Gillingham, we have trained all of our reading intervention specialists in Orton-Gillingham. We're, in fact, I think, Julie, you started this week with our kindergarten teachers and training them in Orton-Gillingham. We've got another session, I believe, in August, and then this fall we'll make sure that all of our kindergarten teachers are trained in that. Our special education, our student support services is just look at implementing this year benchmark phonics intervention and benchmark steps to advance, again, in alignment with structured literacy and science of reading. And then with the addition, we also have purchased and will be installing additional recodable books and text for our K-1 classrooms and our intervention teachers again for this year.
So, yes, those decodable readers. I've got boxes and boxes stacked up in my cube that I'm wanting to get to because we did order a lot of really great materials I'm excited about using with our students. So the next part is all about screening. And we have already been screening our students for characteristics of dyslexia as identified in current legislation, but this just adds some more, I'd call them more bumpers to how we screen. But it's not a new process for us. So we have been submitting data to MDE. Now it'll just look a little bit different. One thing that is different is now the twice annually screening takes place the first 6 weeks of school and the last 6 weeks of school. So they put those guidelines in place. That's similar to what we were already doing, but it even just lets us look at the school year and say, okay, we've got from here to here, where before we might have done things a little differently in kindergarten based on them having a little more soft landing time before we assess, but now we've got firm guidelines in place that we were basically already on target with. And it will include the foundational reading skills and characteristics of dyslexia. We have been already screening in phonological awareness, phonics, decoding, and fluency, but now they have specified the tools that we can use. We had already been using FastBridge grades 2 to 5 for years. We'll just be expanding that now to K1 as well, which is something we've considered the last couple of years, but we did have a tool that kindergarten teachers were happy with and able to inform instruction with, but now, as of July 1, MDE has approved FastBridge, so we had already planned on making that shift and moving there for K1, and it aligns with one of the tools MDE selected. They only listed 2. FastBridge and Dibbles as their 2 tools. So we'll just keep doing what we're doing, but also putting some more specific parameters in place that are helpful to us. We don't need to report our data differently until June 15th of 2025. So this year we'll be making tweaks, adapting and supporting teachers because this is a new process for some classroom teachers as well, just to look at the phonological awareness data a little bit differently, and then possibly use FastBridge as a tool for some ongoing progress monitoring as well. So let's see. That's really all for screeners at this point. Let's see. Okay. So the next slide is really all about our plan. Our local literacy plan is something we've had in place and is on our webpage, but I will say this needs to be updated and replaced. The last update was in 2020, and a bit has happened since then. So when I go on, something we're always doing is just looking at other districts and how are they approaching it? What do their plans look like? And I've seen on several where it says like update in progress or under construction because we're awaiting some additional guidelines from MDE. So we definitely have work to do, even just in better articulating what we do on that specific plan. So we have it and it meets the previous guidelines, but now we'll be doing some updates to reflect what we do, but then they'll give us a new template not until March 1st of 2024. So we'll make some revisions sometimes people will ask me about something and I'll say, oh, we do that. We need to reflect that in our literacy plan. That's public facing. We really want to be clear about what we do. So we'll make those updates, but then we'll have to revise again once we get the guidelines from MDE. We will, as Austin mentioned before, we've always reported data, and Stacy Lochner is a big part of gathering that data, reporting to the state on our efforts to screen for characteristics of dyslexia. But now we'll report at the end of every grade level versus like the read well by 3rd grade thinking. And our first submission And that format isn't really due until June 15th, 2024. So we'll be doing that work. It's just that we'll report it differently then. Let's see. So that is really, I'm going to say about the local literacy plan there. Now, a really important part, our ongoing job-embedded training that Austin was talking about earlier, and Dana as well. We will get a list of approved trainings, and it will be a minimum of 3 by August 15th, so just a couple weeks out. Orton Gillingham is expected to be approved. We believe there'll be, we had conversations with Michael Rodriguez at the U of M, the Dean of Education, as well as Kim Gibbons through Carrie. So we tried to, gather as best as we could what we might at this point. We don't have anything definitively, but when you look at the aligned tools for screening that we're aware of, we believe Orton Gillingham is one that should be expected to be approved, which is part of why we're already training teachers. I trained literacy specialists, as Austin mentioned, back in January, and this isn't a process that it was like something that, oh, the READ Act's coming, better do this. This is a process that started back in 2020-ish in discussions, and then there were training phases to the point where now we can train in-house and do that job-embedded professional learning, not just the 30-hour training, but then how do we take it into PLCs and think about the students in front of us? How do we make adaptations? How do we really sync up with CCC so that the language makes sense and is not confusing to students? So I was with the group all day today, 8 to 4, training. I'm tired and also energized because it was a great group of teachers just asking, they already have such a solid foundation, and then just really asking questions that will help elevate the learning for students. So I'll be back with them tomorrow morning. It was kindergarten teachers and special educators today. And we have 3 cohorts this summer, and then we'll have probably another in the year, which timeline TBD after we get most people through by October. Let's see, so special education teachers in service of using Benchmark, and kindergarten teachers in service of intensifying instruction in CCC are getting this training. What else there? Let's see. So let me just make sure. Okay. Let's go forward here. Oh, there are a lot of monitors up here. I was just trying to touch screen something that's not a touch screen. This is. I don't think that is. Is this? That's you.
Yeah. So again, a couple of more dates here. These 2 specifically in August speak to getting a literacy lead in place. We call a literacy specialist or a literacy lead. We believe very strongly we've got that person already in place, and we're making sure that we'll keep up as the iterations of what that training requires. But as you can see, this bullet point number 1 here, this is Julie we're talking about. She's Orton Gillingham Level 4 instructor, certified structured literacy dyslexia interventionist. She partners with our families and staff. I believe also the only Institute for Multisensory Education OG Plus trainer in the state of Minnesota. Also looking at additional training of this year. I think we're going to be able to fit it in going up to a level 5 instructor. So taking that even to the next level. So you talk a little bit about it. I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit more about the OG train, the kind of trainer. Or...
Possibly, just because one group, as I look out at the audience too, one thing that is, sorry, I'll go back to the microphone, is helpful to think about is right now I'm training in I can train teachers in OG+, which is really kindergarten through 3rd grade. It's really foundational skills based for anyone, as well as older students who might need those foundational skills. But I'll also be able to train in a phonological awareness course, so I might be able to do some partnering with early learning, and also in the morphology, which will be up in the upper grades. So those things are in progress. The train-the-trainer process, I've had some people from other districts ask me about it recently because they're saying, well, how can we, how can we get one on staff? So you train, then you go through a year-long practicum, then you go through a training phase that's over a year, and it's intense, but it was really good work. So I'm in the process of doing that for just adding on those additional certifications. Another thing just to mention, and then I'll kick it back to Austin, but depending on what NDE tells us on August 15th, myself and some others are also letters trained. So we've already looked into the process of if letters is a route that we go, which has different timelines than something like an MZ in-house OG training, we have people well-positioned to go ahead and do that in-house trainer for letters, and it's not very time-intensive to take that next step, so myself and others. There's also a Letters for Early Childhood. So we're kind of looking into all the options so that we're ready to act as soon as MDE gives us more information.
Yeah, so and within our department, that's Julie, Ann Frenbach, and Bridget Austin, all letters trained. So again, as you mentioned, it would be a short sort of step of qualifications to get qualified if we did go the route of that letters training. I know we have additional staff and teachers who've gone through that training as well, so we have kind of a start into that. We have, I think, so we mentioned some of the OG training, and some of our teachers also, Wilson's trained through that when we did the initial CCC implementation. So part of this and those steps, again, is just kind of, it takes a while to get everyone trained, and so they give you a little bit of time to get through all those levels of training. And first part of that is getting someone in the lead to help us through that process. Again, with bringing our new literacy coaches on this fall and the reestablishment of our CCC leadership team, we'll be doing a lot of that work to support some of that training and making sure, again, they support that literacy process, PLC and continuous improvement process throughout our teams and in all of our buildings. But these gray boxes here are a little bit further in the future, but kind of have the culmination of some of the things that we'll be doing over the next few years. And a lot of these, as you'll see, and as we've talked about, you'll see we're already in place. So again, as I talked about at the beginning of this, we're ahead of the curve in many ways in Wayzata, looking at intervention programs that need to be taught by intervention teachers who are successfully completed evidence-based reading instruction, right? We've ticked off a lot of those boxes. A lot of our intervention teachers are already OG trained. We're, again, part of that responsibility of our continuous improvement, part of the MTSS process, will not only be keeping up responding to the READ Act, but keeping up and responding with the literacy needs of our students. And really, what we see this is outstanding instruction is what this boils down to. So again, those layers, MTSS, CEL, our work through the BUILT team, it really is systems work. It is a continuous process. It's not a one and done. And even as I imagine as we get to July 1st of 2027, we'll probably identify not only through potential legislation, but through our own means, additional trainings and ways to support our teachers and support our literacy program to continue to improve.
Okay, so again, broad overview of where we're at with that READ Act and those dates and so forth that we want to hit. But the bottom line, if we walk away tonight, is to know that Wayzata is well positioned to meet and exceed the requirements of the READ Act for each and every learner, that we're watching this very closely. We're very engaged at the state level, and again, really have an amazing staff to be handle this, and are very blessed in that area to truly have some of the best, not only in teaching and learning, but in all of our buildings, and that we continue to do that professional learning and have really been thinking ahead of this. So feel really good about where we're at and the work. A lot of work yet to be done, and we await the state and some of their decision making as well. And as soon as they do that, then we'll respond in kind as well. So that's what we have for you tonight, and we're here obviously to take any questions as well.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Julie. We were at neighbors and meetings all day today, and your room was radiating energy, and there were just all these groups of people working in the different places. It was just really exciting to see that work and the dedication and the teachers in their seats. So thank you for that. I'm sure my board colleagues have some questions or comments. Sheila.
As you said, you don't have to be bad to get better. And I just want to say thank you for all the work that you're doing around this. We're learning more all the time, and it's really good to see this in Wayzata, and you've been doing it for a long time, and now with this act, it's so many good things. So thank you for that. I did have a few questions. It's my understanding that the READ Act provides some funding for training, and is that something that our district can make use of, and will that help so that Julie and people in our district aren't having to do all of it, and also maybe help it go a little faster? I don't know what.
I know when we talked with Dr. Gibbons and Michael Rodriguez, those plans to kind of streamline because we apply for the funding, and there might even be some other people in the room know about this as well, but there might be some retroactive funding we can even get back for some of the literacy training that we have already done because we didn't really want to wait. These were plans we already had, and I started my train the trainer process a few years ago, so we weren't going to wait for the guidelines when we knew that there were students in front of us. Depending on what they come out with, we'll kind of see. We do get, as far as the funding piece, by doing it in-house, we get a significantly reduced training cost. Like anyone, I have had other districts ask to join our trainings. They can, but we pay half the price that other districts do. And then we can be flexible with our school schedule and with teacher time and not taking time out of the classroom like we might have to for some other trainings during the year. So does that answer your question?
Yes,
I think.
Yeah, and like Julie said, they've talked about some dollars there for curriculum as well, and so we're watching that closely too. Our CCC curriculum purchased in 2017 is already one iteration old. And so we're kind of waiting to see, we purchased that well before, so they won't let us go back that far. So it might be a situation where we're already getting close to needing to purchase the next round. And so we may look into that. So we've kind of been on pause waiting to see if there's an ability to access those dollars for that as well. We're also in tandem, as we talked about at another meeting, working on our writing curriculum right now, and we piloted it last year, and we're doing an expansion of our pilot this year rather than full implementation because we really want to get these reading pieces, this literacy working strongly in place with our literacy coaches, but it might also qualify for some reimbursement on that. So we're just kind of waiting as the state figures this act out and to see what that means to us as well.
What was the writing curriculum that you guys decided on?
And we haven't locked in on one yet, so they're doing an expanded pilot of one of their kind of preferred favorites, which is benchmarks right now.
And is that, does the READ Act?
Doesn't really speak to a writing curriculum, though if you look at, the reading rope and Scarborough's rope and all the pieces, how tightly tied reading is to literacy, or writing is to literacy. And so we're looking for a stronger curriculum that aligns tighter with our CCC as well.
Lind.
Thank you. I'm very hopeful and optimistic that our achievement gaps will reduce quite a bit because of what's going on with the READ Act and what you guys have been doing. I have two clarifying questions. Actually, it's a similar clarifying questions, one on slide 7 and one other one on slide 8.
There's slide 7? No.
No?
Oh, so it calls it 7 on this, but
Okay.
actually,
It's the one that talks about the date for the purchase of the curriculum.
this right here?
No, it has the dates, July 1st, 2023.
That says that on the top of
Oh, okay, yes, that's the one. I'm sorry, the one before
Okay.
that. Okay, so on the top it says July 1, 2023, new purchase of literacy curriculum intervention materials must be evidence-based per statute. Right in the middle, it says state will approve at least 5 reading curricula by January 2024. So what is the difference? I don't understand those two dates.
That would be MDE and the state legislature, yes. So the original plan was that anything after any new curriculum schools were purchasing would need to be literacy-based, science-based, and that they'd be providing those, but they have pushed back when they're providing that curriculum until January. So the ask is that new purchases are evidence-based by school districts if they were purchasing something this summer, but they're not giving the list of what will make that until January.
So if we make a mistake and we don't buy what they are requiring us to buy, then we have to buy the new ones again?
Not necessarily. They have a process. They're saying they'll have a process in place where you can ask them to take a look at what you have and see that it qualifies. That is, though, why we have not taken a look at where we're at in our CCC for this newest edition. We want to wait and make sure that CCC makes that list first before we would do that. And again, when meeting with Dr. Gibbons and Michael Rodriguez, the tool that they've used to evaluate curriculum around evidence-based or science of reading, if you will, is the same tool that we used in the selection of CCC as well.
Okay. And then the next slide, I have confusion about the dates too. So June 30th is when we submit the report. And then it says at the bottom, first data submission of the required universal ready screening is June 15, 2025.
Yeah, those are two different things. So you submit an annual report, and then we're required to do the universal screening by June 15th. So they're two different pieces there, because you're doing the screening and then you're getting the data from that. So you have to start the screening and say you're doing that 1 year, and then it takes that full year to get the data for that.
Okay. So the first requirement of June 30th, 2024 is just a report on how you are going to do the screening. Once you do the screening, then you submit the data on the following year.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And as we said, that's screening that we've always done, and just the addition of K-1, which we're starting this year already and had planned for that. So again, well-positioned for that. We'll just wait for how they want the data submitted.
Linda.
Yes, well, thank you for all that hard work and the explanation about READ. I just want to mention, all of you are doing really sensational work. Julie, I think it's really impressive that you're willing to spend a lot of time to move from level 4 to level 5, and how helpful that can be to the district. So I just wanted to sort of draw that out and say thank you. It's a lot of time and effort, I know.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Sheila.
It's been a long time since I was a hallway reader at Gleason Lake. Like 5 years going on, yeah. I'm wondering, as we heard from the community ed earlier about the literacy volunteers, back in the day when I was trained, I didn't even have to go in person for it. I received a sheet of paper, and it was pretty much all balanced literacy, which is very easy as somebody who doesn't know how to do, what teachers do. It's very easy to do that. And I'm wondering, is it more difficult now to train literacy volunteers, and what does that look like?
Anne Fehrenbach is typically, and she's not here tonight, but she's typically done the training of literacy volunteers in partnership with early childhood. So there may be some things that we look at differently. However, for literacy volunteers, we view that as more practice versus instruction too. So one thing we want to make sure of is that we don't have kids, paired with the wrong text so that they're possibly engaging in practices that aren't helpful. So that's important, but we're also, we might need to think about how we tweak things that we support volunteers in doing or saying. However, it's not really the instruction, it's just the practice. So that might be, I don't know if that's helpful, but they're not really going to be doing the direct, explicit teaching that teachers that are trained are doing. Where we want to see that carry over is that mastery and transfer of the students, and then that's just an additional opportunity to practice with feedback. So there could be some things that we support, like when I had volunteers, even just my own volunteers when I was in the classroom, I would give them just some things you could say about, at an error, at something that didn't make sense. What could you go back and check? So there might be some additional support that we could provide there, and I'm really looking forward to partnering them. But Anne Fehrenbach has done a lot of that leadership, and I know did some things. I wasn't aware it was ever not. I think in person is an option, but they used to have it at the Hennepin County Library, and then we had it directly in buildings. And so some things in 2021, 2020 may have been different, but I used to always see them in person as a whole group, and then when I was at Greenwood, saw them all separately as well. So we want to make sure those practices are common across the district to support our literacy volunteers in supporting students.
Julie, I'll just add on to that indeed they are in the buildings, and there's a broader one that Anne is there for. There's also a smaller one in the actual building with the principal sharing some things. There's also some touch points on a monthly basis of what's happening, and the teachers that I've been reading with and the teacher that I read with last year, just this past year, also did lots of touch points of just a really fast, here's what we're working on today, and or this week, and here are things here's something that I would like for you to do. And so there's a pretty robust engagement, both from a district level of providing support. There's some check-ins kind of with the volunteers on a regular basis. There's trainings in the buildings led by district literacy staff, and there's teachers who are engaged as well. Other questions? I also would just like to extend a thank you to your team. The thing that stands out the most for me is the investment in the training of the trainer and the connection. And I think we know so much about education trainings and all the things that we're asking our teachers to go to, and they're often going off-site and they're working with other people. And Julie, I heard you say a number of different times the ways that we're doing it, not only having it in our space, and you're doing that, but the ways that then it's embedded in the work that they're doing. It's not a person at a place, but it's in my space, and not a one and done, but an ongoing. And so we understand that this is of utmost importance for our students from E to 21, and for our community to understand that. And just thank you so much to everyone in your part in making this happen. And we'll look forward to all of these rollouts and the news from MDE. So we'll wait. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. And we have, we'll do a little transition for some things. And so the last item on our agenda this afternoon for this meeting of the Wayzata School Board are our superintendent reports. And so Dr. Anderson will join us to give us a school district superintendent year in review. And I would, just as they're getting the camera set up, I'll share a few highlights and things. The board has a process by which we work with the superintendent that involves setting up some goals, doing a mid-year check-in, doing some reporting out, and then where we are today, which is the overall year in review. And so Dr. Anderson and maybe team, I'm not sure what your plan is, thank you for joining us this afternoon and for sharing with us some highlights from the year.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to share a few highlights. You'll recall that in the board packet, there was a narrative document that sort of provided a number of activities and things that were on the radar during the course of the school year. And we just encourage you to, if you've not had a chance to study through that a little bit, to be sure that you do that. It's been a very busy year. There are a lot of moving parts to our school district, as you know. And what I try to do when I put together that year-end summary memo is to provide some highlights of things that were on the radar and that we were working on. I do have a PowerPoint that I'm going to be sharing, and I've asked Dr. Flansburgh to join me. He'll have some of the slides that will speak a little more specifically to some of the CEL work and the alignment that we're doing with our instruction and instructional delivery, and some of the professional development that's happening with that. I think you'll see a number of overlaps with the two presentations that we had this evening already, and some that we've had in previous work sessions. So as you would know, a lot of the work that is on my radar is shared on the radars of our department leads and our executive directors and our directors. I would also like to mention that it's been our tradition that typically in October, sometimes November, at the regular school board meeting, or preceded with the work session, Stacy Lackner, our Director of Research and Evaluation, works with members of our teaching and learning team to provide an update on student achievement data. That doesn't get released. For some reason, many years ago, they aligned the release of MCA data and standardized testing scores with the state fair, which is about a month off, I think. And then we have an opportunity to kind of review that data and dive into it and understand it better, and then we'll do a presentation to the board in regard to our student achievement from the previous year. I'm also cognizant of time. We have 2 more board meetings to do yet today when this one's concluded. So I think I allocated 15 minutes for myself. I just took 5 there, probably in my lead-in, but I'm going to try to compress some of this. So I'll try to do a real high-level flyover, and I know Dr. Flansburgh will do the same. So as you know, our work is guided by our district strategic roadmap, and that was first implemented. It was redesigned and implemented. There were strategies and focus areas prior to that, obviously, but this format of the strategic roadmap has survived well over a decade, about 12 years ago when we designed and implemented the first one. It's served us well, and it includes a mission, a vision, our core values, and strategic directions. That was revised again in 2015 and in 2019, and we are in the process of doing that as we speak. In fact, we met with, Dr. Flansburgh and I met with a consultant this morning to talk about some of the next steps and further processing of that. So our overriding goal is probably not going to be to rewrite the mission, rewrite the vision and redo all of our core values, but to really zero in and focus on those strategic directions and make sure that those are aligned in a way that makes sense with the work that we need to get done and also that would be measurable. We've had conversations before that sometimes these strategic directions, I really like them. I think they hit the right core areas. There's a lot of overlap with them. And that might actually be a good thing in that it accelerates and can really reinforce in a variety of arenas those key points and those key things that we're trying to accomplish. But I think one of the goals I would set for this as we redo it is to bring greater clarity and create them in a way that they can more easily have metrics written for them and align in a better way than I think sometimes these are our 4 strategic directions. Again, I think the themes are great. I think as we continue to develop our strategic directions for the new roadmap to be approved, right now we're kind of looking at the September board meeting, maybe at the August work session to have a pretty good draft of the strategic directions and any other suggested edits that we might make at the August work session, and then if it's the board's desire, we'd bring that back in September and get that approved early in the school year. But our 4 strategic directions are listed here: achievement, personalization, each and every, and health and well-being. And those I know are all very familiar to not only the board, but our staff, and I know teachers and community and our principals refer to our strategic roadmap often. Some of our overriding district priority goals for the past year, and I think they're ongoing, and I believe you saw this in Jenny's presentation also with community education, is a focus on our student experience, focusing on reducing academic disparities, and focusing on high-quality instructional practices. And in a little bit, when Dr. Flansburgh speaks about the leadership he's bringing to the district with the Center for Educational Leadership, and you heard the acronym earlier spoken to of BILT. I'm not sure that it was clarified what that was. That's our Building Instructional Leadership Teams. And I believe it was Michelle who used that metaphor. That's really the on-site teams that meet to talk about student or instruction and student learning, and really helping to design and develop those building improvement goals around the work of those teams. And that's in direct connection to the work with the Center for Educational Leadership that, again, Dr. Flansburgh will speak a little bit more about and give an update on what we accomplished with that this year and what's on the radar for the coming year. So I've spoken about this. You just had a lengthy literacy presentation. So I utilized this slide or one similar to it along the way earlier in the year to really focus on this read well by 3rd grade, and as you heard, a lot of that's evolving, and they're using some new terminology and making some modifications with that. I think you also heard one of our teaching and learning staff members reference the importance of not only, we're not done at the end of 3rd grade, but we continue on 4th and 5th, and really throughout the school experience, the K-12 experience with us. But this focus on really zeroing in on having students on track by the end of 3rd grade continues to be a focus of ours. You heard an elevated commitment to and focus on pre-K learning and how to maximize that, and how do we launch well into kindergarten, that early childhood success learner equation is something that we're clearly paying close attention to and seeking to learn as much about that and how we can improve our pre-K opportunities. As you know, we don't have access to all of our pre-K kids. Some pre-K students are with us. Some are in private schools and in private providers. Some are at home with adults who provide enrichment and stimulation and learning while at home. And others might have greater limitations in what they might have access to. So we really do welcome in kindergarten students who have had a variety of experiences, and anything that we can do to help enhance that experience really helps them get off to a great launch. So we really have this pre-K block of time. We have kindergarten, we have 1st, 2nd, and 3rd graders, sort of the big blocks. And then we have some times in between where we can do some different things. And I think that there's another slide coming up here that speaks to a little bit of the transition and the opportunities that perhaps we can do more with to help reinforce those 5 major blocks of times, being pre-K, kindergarten, first, second, and third, to help accelerate student learning. And one of those is the strengthening out of school time. In other words, some of the before and after school learning, literacy reinforcement things that we can do. Our special services program offers what's called extended school year, our ESY program. Students who receive educational services under an individualized education program through our special services department if they meet the eligibility for the ESY program in the summer, can get some really great learning and reinforcement there. And then just also any of the other summer learning that we can do to reinforce not only what's in the READ Act, but the component parts of our curriculum and helping to make use of some of the time away from those 165 to 70 school days that we have during the course of the year. How can we have access to these students more frequently to reinforce what they learned during that time and to be sure that they continue in their learning? I think this is where I turned it over to Dr. Flansburgh, and he's going to speak to us a little bit about some of the things that are in place at the buildings and that he has provided more of the direct leadership to than I have. So Dr. Flansburgh, if you would, please.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson, Madam Chair, members of the board. I want to take a moment before we begin, as we think about the work that we're engaged in, to really acknowledge where that work takes place. It's in our classrooms. It's overseen by our principals, and it's done in partnership with so many district individuals who really help support what's taking place with teachers. So I'd like to give a shout out and a kudos to Dana Miller and her team with a lot of the work that they have done. You heard about the READ Act work that they have been engaged in. Solveig Herade with the work that she's been engaged in. Ginny Nias with the work that she's engaged in with our special student population. And the 4 of us together, along with Dr. Anderson over the course of the year, engaged in a lot of meetings with site-built teams. And we're going to talk about the mechanisms, as Dr. Anderson has put it up here. What are we doing differently than what we've done before? Every year we've had site growth plans, site goals, school improvement plans, and we always think about what are we doing to shift and really change those into a living document. What are we doing to be able to, instead of having something that it's a goal at the beginning of the year that we create, put on the shelf, and then at the end of the year we get our data, take it off the shelf and go, how did we do? The idea of the building instructional leadership teams are really multi-dimensional. Number one, we're inviting teachers to be a part of that plan and that process, to really invite them into the decision-making and the instructional leadership in a way that isn't always how schools are designed or set up to be designed. So when we think about the priority goals that we're doing and the creation of those teams, it really begins there with the principals working in partnership and collaboration with their teacher leaders at the site. We get to come in as a team and be able to hear about the great things that are happening, but it's not only to just come in and hear about those great things, but also to be able to be responsive to what their needs are at the site. What are we hearing? How are we responding? What is teaching and learning that they need to be able to do differently? What are Dr. Anderson and I hearing from teams and principals? And as they're really engaging in the professional development, being able to keep a focus on the goal. Solveig Herade will often say, sometimes we just need to make the thing the thing. And are we focusing on what's really important? So one of the things that we have shifted moving into this coming year, as we talk about our strategic directions and how important they are to the system, they're really going to lead into a district operational plan that is going to be the work of our strategic leadership team, that is going to guide the work of the building instructional leadership teams and the principals. That guides the site growth plans. That's that through line of instructional leadership that we have referenced time and time again over the course of the year. We began this past year on the emphasis on the daily student experience. Built teams were asked to create a goal to really get into the rhythm and understand What does that mean to have an established site goal that we're visiting and revisiting and coming back to and measuring differently? There is significant work taking place within the system regarding our data warehouses that a number of the members of our team are going to be reviewing and looking at, because one of the things that we have asked our principals to do differently is have the data at their fingertips to be able to say, how are our students doing? We've heard a number of times where board members have asked the question, we know that we have disparities in academic outcomes, so what are we doing about it? And what we're asking the principals to do differently as we move forward with those disparities in academic outcomes is really hone in, because if everything's important, you've heard me say this before, nothing's important. We can try to be all things to everyone, and it waters down what we really are. We're asking principals to narrow that focus going into the August Built leadership and really starting to help their teams hone in and say, what are we going to narrow in and focus in on to move the needle? So when we talked about this year being the daily experience, that's not going away. We will continue with the daily experience, and we're going to engage in the academic outcomes as well. So that's part of that shift. And you'll apologize. I know Dr. Anderson joked at the beginning. He said he used 5 minutes on the first slide. I apologize as well. Brevity has never been my strong suit. So again, the building instructional teams were new to all sites, instructional in focus. What are we doing to actually see outcomes differently? What are we doing differently within our teams to be able to see how those outcomes actually shift? We really want to develop teacher leaders, not just inviting them into the conversation and participating, but what are we doing to develop them internally to be able to go back and be leaders within the building for their PLC teams and for the work that needs to happen on behalf of our students. Dana Miller and her team brought almost 100 different Wayzata educators to the PLC Institute just a few weeks ago, and it's about alignment and making sure that when we're talking about professional learning communities, the work that's happening in every building is aligned across all of the buildings. And the work that they're engaged in at the sites is aligned within the built to the PLC so that students can benefit from that. When we talk about every grade level or department across all sites with the PLCs, again, that's linked into the work of the built and the building growth plans. We focus on the instructional practices, the collaboration to be able to get to results. Because we can have a wonderful student experience, but if we're not getting the results, and as even Dr. Sahoni had said it earlier, he looks forward to the READ Act and the work that the team is doing to be able to see us eliminate some of those disparities. That's our goal, and that is our work, and that will stay at the forefront of everything that we're doing as we move forward. When we talk about equity, meeting the specific needs of all students, you've seen the learner-driven questions for all, but again, I will go back to and think about when we say equity, what do we mean? What are we focusing on? It's the student experience and the disparities in the daily experience that students have and the disparities in academic outcomes that students have. So we want to be able to address you can't jump automatically to academic outcomes without beginning at the front end of the student experience. So as part of the Center for Educational Leadership's work, they have an inverted triangle, and at the top of that inverted triangle is the daily student experience. What are we doing to begin there? It leads into the student learning outcomes, leads into what is our plan for instruction, what's our instructional strategies, and then it finishes with curriculum. All too often, we automatically assume we should jump to curriculum and that should be our lead. In fact, that's actually the last place we end up because we have to build the foundation to be able to allow students to access that without restriction to be able to do exceptionally well. I think that's where I finish, and I'll hand it back off to Dr. Anderson.
Thanks, Nate. So this particular slide, I'm not going to spend any time on really to speak of because you had a detailed and comprehensive report from Jenny Ebert earlier. But again, I'm using just some slides to emphasize the complexity of the school district and all of the different moving parts. And you had a great description of that earlier, but this is that community ed wheel that Jenny and Michelle spoke about and all the wonderful programming that is part of our community ed program. Just a quick overview of finances. As you know, we've been through some difficult financial challenges here in the past couple of years. primarily related right back to that 2021 school year and driven by challenges from the pandemic with loss of students and increased costs and yeah, just some really some big challenges for us. So fortunately at the time we had a bit of a fund reserve that was able to help us carry through that a little bit. Our two overriding goals with budget, as you're well aware, because we recently approved a budget about a month ago probably, and our focus is not only to put together a balanced budget for school board approval prior to July 1, so by no later than June 30. We also are cognizant of what's it look like a few years out, and how do we ensure that we meet the board policy guidance of maintaining a 5 to 7% fund balance and ensuring that we have financial stability and sustainability within the school district for the long term. So, you know, it's kind of a wrestling match, so to speak, of what do we do for the immediate and for the coming school year, and how do we make sure that whatever decisions are made for that, it positions us as well as we can for those years that follow beyond that. I also just wanted to reference the tech levy that voters will be voting on November 7th. It's to renew one of our two existing voter-approved levies, and this particular one is going to come to the voters in November. It would be for a 10-year time frame, and it essentially renews an existing voter-approved levy that's in place, one of the two, to help support all of our technology systems, the hardware, software, professional development, support staff. Last month, I believe, we recognized essentially the whole technology team, and you heard an overview from the director, Wade Phillips, who provided a lot of information about all the great work that our team does. I think they're second to none in regard to school district technology teams, and we're very fortunate to have Wade's leadership and his team's dedicated commitment to helping ensure that our systems are working well for us. So more on that in the future, but this will be something that we'll be out speaking to PTAs, our liaison group, community groups, and our staff groups in the months of September and October, and doing some pre-work in August as our staff return for the start of the school year. So in summary, some of the journey that we traveled this year, obviously I just mentioned the balanced budget and cost containment, as challenging as that was. We went through the process again to try to position us in a way to have a balanced budget for the coming year, as well as ensuring long-term sustainability. And we had a lot of engagement with legislators. I'd like to thank our school board members for their engagement and their work during the course of the year. I know our professional organizations, the MSBA, AMSD, MASA, all of the statewide organizations put a lot of dedicated efforts into helping ensure that our legislators were well versed on the importance of adequate funding for public schools. We also do a lot in our district with school safety and security, cybersecurity. And in fact, a few days ago, we had a reunification drill at the Plymouth Community Center, working in tandem with local law enforcement authorities and emergency response teams. We had a drill where we set up an opportunity for us to field test our reunification with parents and students in the event that we needed to evacuate a building, and utilized the community center in Plymouth to reunite families with students. And I appreciate the work that Kristen Tollison put into that to organize that, working in tandem with our local law enforcement. School facilities, we had a conversation earlier tonight about some modifications to boundaries we've already made and some more that we're contemplating, and continuing to monitor that student growth. I think we're up about 150 students for the current the year we just finished, and we're anticipating that number again. You might recall that in back in pre-COVID days, we were growing 250 to 300 kids per year. So that did slow down. It pushed pause a little bit on immediate conversations about another elementary school and a middle school, but that hasn't gone away. It's only been delayed. And we believe that we can make some in-house modifications, as were discussed earlier tonight, and extend that timeline a little bit to give us some additional time to plan and do some more demographic studies with anticipated growth. I mentioned the updating of the strategic roadmap, and then finally just working hard to achieve operational excellence in all that we do and striking that balance of efficient and effective operations, which we call operational excellence. I think that's my last slide. So given that, Madam Chair, we have 3 minutes before the proposed end of the work session. I'll allow you to make a determination on what you would like to do with Q&A with this session tonight.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. Anderson. Thank you, Dr. Flansburgh. And this really is, I know we're on a time crunch, but this really is an important work of our school board too. So before I make some wrap-up comments, I'll make sure that I'll see if my board members have questions or comments. Linda.
I have a comment in that the Superintendent Evaluation Committee met, and I think that you all can see that Dr. Anderson has not had his feet up and just relaxing all year long, that all of these things have been really important endeavors and things that he's been working really, really hard on. And I don't know whether you want to tell the process about what happens as far as we go forward on this. But anyway, I want to thank you for all the hard work that you have done, and there will be some follow-up steps to this.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Indeed, that is true. Thank you, and a thank you to the Superintendent Evaluation Committee. It's one of our board committees that works to help us do a number of things, including prepare this process. And so this year, like every year, we have the end of the year where Dr. Anderson shares with us some of the work that he's been doing and its alignment with the goals. The Superintendent Committee has been working with Dr. Anderson throughout the year, as I mentioned, to help to identify some goals and do some mid-year. Board colleagues, the next step is that you'll have a chance to review the information again that was in the packet and take this into consideration. And then we have an opportunity for every board member to provide feedback on a set of questions that we all answer. We do that in a couple of closed meetings in which the board shares their information and then prepares a written report for Dr. Anderson, by which we will then meet with him as a board in another meeting to share that information and to look forward to 2023, 2024. Our listening public can look for a report regarding our superintendent evaluation, typically in the fall, once that process has happened, in a summary of the board document. So thank you, Dr. Anderson, for this preparation and for your ongoing work and collaboration with us. Thank you to board members for the work that you've done before and the work that will be happening in the future in sharing your thoughts and reflections. And finally, indeed, putting up your feet is not at all something that's been on the radar. There's so much work that is done absolutely in our classroom with the incredible teachers that we have and all of the support staff. And each one of those people depend on strong leaders. And you are strong leaders by giving us a vision, by giving us expectations, and by modeling really, really hard work and dedication. And so thank you, Dr. Anderson. Thank you, Dr. Flansburgh, for your work. Thank you to our SLT team. And stay tuned. And on that, we have no votes, but I will say that the time is, on that clock, it says 6:06. My iPad says 6:01, and the Wayzata Public Schools Board of Education work session for Monday, July 24th, 2023 is adjourned.